the NTUC announced in 2017 that where possible, all PAP MPs, which include cabinet ministers, would be appointed as advisors in the unions, professional associations, and guilds under NTUC. As at 2017, there were 71 PAP MPs who were advisors to unions. It should be noted that many union advisors are there not only in an advisory capacity, but are involved in the governance of the union.
I listened very carefully. I studied the bill, and this was all about an attack on the NTUC, which I think is unfair, it is opportunistic, and it goes beyond the agenda of what we are debating today, which is a specific legislation to advance the protection and the future of platform workers. So will Mr. Giam agree with me that the first half of his speech is actually fairly irrelevant?
The first part of my speech is relevant to what I'm going to be talking about in the bill. And I think it's important to set the background for why I'm going to argue some of the points that I will be talking about.
We cannot, Mr. Speaker, be using Parliament and legislation to craft political speeches that go well beyond the ambit and the scope of the legislation that we are debating. So I raise this as a matter of principle, not as a matter of politics.
If one were to do the simple exercise of just Googling unions and politics or unions and political parties, you will actually see that there is a very clear explanation as to why unions and politics are very closely involved. So if Mr. Giam is going to proceed with his speech on the basis that they must be independent and neutral, he must also understand that that is not the case in democracies around the world.
I believe that unions must be independent and non-partisan, and they must represent their workers without fear or favor in front of their employers, the government, and the ruling party. And I believe that unions which are independent from political parties will be in a better position to negotiate for their workers regardless of the political situation.
Mr. Giam, I just request that you refer to Standing Order, Section 50. And this is with reference to the relevance of the topics that you talk about. And this also applies to every member. Leader of the opposition.
Mr. Speaker, just to put on record, I think the remarks you made at the end with respect are critical because I distinctly recall in this House, not too long ago, I believe it was a budget speech, and the Honourable Member, Mr. Chris de Souza, did not speak about the budget, but went on to advise the government or the PAP to make a decision on the 4G leadership. So I think the salutary message you provided at the end is important because it cannot be just accusations made at the opposition, but I think some PAP members ought to reflect on themselves.
We have a bill, we have an agenda today. When it comes to a budget debate, right, the members have free rein to discuss what they want. In addition to the budget, the objectives, the values, the future they want to see for Singapore. And at that time, I was concerned because we had a position that there would be a 4G leadership transition. I stood here and gave one of the most difficult speeches of my political career, which is that I had hoped and hope that the 4G leadership would come together and choose a man or a woman to take us forward. How is that not in concert with the budget? Budget is finance. It is also about different education, ministries, finance, defense, and all of that. But without key leadership, budgets are nothing. An attack on the NTUC for, I think, 70% of the speech of Mr. Giam on a bill that is meant to advance the welfare, the prospects, the future, the protection, the medical care, the CPF of platform workers is no comparison. That is political opportunism. And I state this as a matter of principle, not as a matter of politics. I put principle first before politics.
Mr. Giam thanked our union leaders for taking good care of our workers. We thank him for that. At least he acknowledges that. But I think in saying that, then you must also give due respect to our union leaders. They are not stooges. Their hearts are in the right place. They do all this for their fellow workers. That's what they are doing this for. And you acknowledge that. And all our unions are doing that. And every union that is affiliated to the NTUC chooses to do that. And the NTUC has a symbiotic relationship with the PAP so that we can convey the views and the needs of the workers to our political partner, so that when they become the ruling party, when they win the trust of Singaporeans and have the mandate to be the ruling party, that the interests of workers in this country will always be taken care of, be given great priority. Look at the context in which we are debating today. This very bill that your party is supporting, where does this come from? This comes from a symbiotic relationship where both sides are trying to undermine and throw the workers under the bus? No. You supported it because it is good for the workers. Is this the only thing that's good for the workers? No. We have decades of track record. Why do you think the workers will support their unions who affiliate themselves to the NTUC? It is because we work for the workers. Leader has earlier also stated that close relationship, you can call it what you like, partnership, alliance, between political parties and trade unions is not uncommon. And they don't do this out of stupidity. They do this because it serves the interests of the constituents that they represent concurrently. That is what they do. So I just wanted to, this as my heartfelt response, be fair to our union leaders, be fair to our unions, be fair to the NTUC. NTUC is not expecting the Workers' Party to support us, but at least be fair.
Many unionists are trying their level best to be able to advocate for workers that they represent, but they face many restrictions in doing so because of the controls that the government, through the NTUC and other legislations, place on the unions. So I believe that my proposals for union independence are meant to empower unionists and platform work associations leaders to act freely in the best interests of their workers. Why is it that every time the Workers' Party brings up a valid policy point, or very often when Workers' Party brings up a valid policy point, we are accused of politicking and making political speeches. Whereas when the PAP talks about something different, it becomes a relevant policy point. I think that there's a need to be fair as well to us.
Nothing in this proposed bill, in the legislation proposed in this bill, has any clauses that is related to how a union ought or not ought to be affiliated to any political party. And since Mr. Giam did go to great extent to talk about affiliation between unions and party, let me just quickly read from the archives of the National Library that says, after the PAP split its left wing to set up the Barisan Socialists, the Singapore Trades Union Congress also split into two rival factions, the NTUC and the Singapore Association of Trade Unions, or SATU. As SATU was aligned with the Barisan Socialists, and the Barisan Socialists in 1988 folded into the Workers' Party. So I think maybe the Workers' Party should think about changing its name, because if you feel so averse about being associated with workers, you might want to think about something else.
We are supporting this bill. On the point that the leader raises that it would be up to the NTUC or the workers of that day whether or not they want to, which party they want to support. So we expect that the NTUC would continue to be aligned with the PAP even after the PAP loses power. It is not an issue of this theoretical grandstanding, but this is an issue of institutional continuity. Are we going to have a situation where any new government that comes to power is completely jammed up?
Trade unions elect their own leaders. It if they have leaders today who are members of the PAP or vice versa, it doesn't mean that that will always be the case. But the point that Mr. Giam is missing is that the trade unions have a mind of their own. They have leadership. They know what to do, and they will act in a way that they think is best for their unions and for their workers.